based on my knowledge, judgment, and experience and everything I have seen in the public record so far, yes, these are biological warfare weapons, offensive biological warfare weapons laboratories set up by the Pentagon. Remember, the Pentagon does not do missionary work. They kill people. And that's why they are there. And it is now coming out. I've seen some of the documents produced by the Russian government. Yes, it appears that's exactly what they were doing. Indeed, there is a BSL-3 down there in Odessa. And if you look at websites for BSL-3s, which I have done repeatedly, you will see they research, develop, test, stockpile, prepare for use every type of hideous Nazi biological warfare weapon you can possibly imagine, using DNA, genetic engineering, gain of function, and now synthetic biology, which, by the way, I also covered in my Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act. Every U.S. citizen and resident involved in these activities is subject to life imprisonment under my statute.
And my guest joining me now is Dr. Francis Boyle, a leading American expert in international law. He was responsible for drafting the Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act of 1989, the American implementing legislation for the 1972 Biological Weapons Convention. He served on the board of the directors of Amnesty International from 1988 to 1992 and represented Bosnia-Herzegovina at the World Court. He served as a legal advisor to the Palestinian Delegation to the Middle East peace negotiations from 91 to 93. Folks, that is just barely a quarter of Dr. Francis Boyle's sterling resume. And it was Dr. Boyle who came on to these airwaves more than 2 years ago now, and to my knowledge, was the first to break the BioLab Wuhan story right here on the Alex Jones Show, and we're glad that he has taken the time to join us here today. Dr. Francis Boyle, I think the question here is obvious. What is going on with the Ukrainian biolabs? What are they for? What is the U.S. involvement in them? And why has the narrative been shifting over the last 2 weeks about them? Where would you like to begin, Dr. Francis Boyle?
Well, Owen, thank you very much for having me on, and my best to all my friends there at InfoWars. And I do want to thank Alex and you and others at InfoWars for letting me speak about the pandemic right from the very beginning. I have to establish my background here. In 1985, I gave a congressional briefing on Capitol Hill against the Reagan administration and its neoconservatives abusing DNA genetic engineering for the research, development, testing, and stockpiling and potential use of biological warfare weapons. That's how long this has been going on, Owen. And as a result, at the end of that briefing, I called for implementing legislation for the United States for the Biological Weapons Convention. And then for the next, I drafted it, and then I worked with my colleagues and friends, the Council for Responsible Genetics, headquartered in Cambridge, Mass., that had some of the top life scientists in the world affiliated with it, and some of the most ethical and principled life scientists in the world, to get it lobbied through Congress. The Reaganites and their neocons fought us tooth and nail because they knew full well I was coming directly after them with the punishment of life in prison. The Department of Justice wanted me to put the death penalty in there, but I'm a lifelong abolitionist, so I toughed it out and said no life imprisonment. Finally, my legislation was approved by both houses of the United States Congress unanimously and signed into law by President Bush Sr. to his credit. The Reaganites were out and the neocons, and with the approval of the Department of Justice. Now, that was May of 1989, the Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act of 1989. And I have been fighting against the U.S. biological warfare weapons establishment, the British establishment, and others ever since then. And based on my knowledge, judgment, and experience and everything I have seen in the public record so far, yes, these are biological warfare weapons, offensive biological warfare weapons laboratories set up by the Pentagon. Remember, the Pentagon does not do missionary work. They kill people. And that's why they are there. And it is now coming out. I've seen some of the documents produced by the Russian government. Yes, it appears that's exactly what they were doing. Indeed, there is a BSL-3 down there in Odessa. And if you look at websites for BSL-3s, which I have done repeatedly, you will see they research, develop, test, stockpile, prepare for use every type of hideous Nazi biological warfare weapon you can possibly imagine, using DNA, genetic engineering, gain of function, and now synthetic biology, which, by the way, I also covered in my Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act. Every U.S. citizen and resident involved in these activities is subject to life imprisonment under my statute. Now, the other day you saw Newland admit that there were biowarfare labs there in Ukraine. As you know, Newland is a neoconservative. As I said, these neoconservatives have been pushing and involved in biological warfare research, development, and testing, going all the way back to Reagan when they first came to power. And in this regard, Owen, as we know, Newland also had a critical role to play in overthrowing the democratically elected government in Ukraine under Yanukovych and establishing a gang of neo-Nazis there in power in Kiev, who are still in power. But I did hear, Owen, want to refer more recently to the neoconservative manifesto. And remember, Newland's a neoconservative, so she knows what she's talking about. And this was the Project for a New American Century, PNAC, I'm sure you're familiar with. If memory serves me correctly, I think John Bolton was the executive editor of that. But in any event, here's what the neoconservative manifesto said, September 2000, just as before they came to power under Bush Jr., including Newland. And this is from page 55 of my book, Biowarfare and Terrorism. I have it all in there. And here, in their seminal report on building America's defenses, the neoconservatives publicly recommended numerous policies for adoption by the United States government, in particular with respect to biological warfare, and I quote, and advanced forms of biological warfare that can target specific genotypes may transform biological warfare from the realm of terror to a politically useful tool, unquote. Now, that's the neocon manifesto, the Project for a New American Century. I can't recall if Newland signed it, but she's in cahoots with all these neocons. So, yes, ethnic-specific biological warfare weapons. The Pentagon has been working on that for quite some time. As we know, in the immediate past, American sources were over in Russia harvesting DNA. And I did give interviews over in Russia at that time. They asked me, well, why are they harvesting DNA? And I said, because they are going to try to develop ethnic-specific biological weapons that would target ethnic Russians, a weapon of genocide. This would be very similar to Zbigniew Brzezinski's counter-ethnic targeting when he worked for Carter. That Brzezinski's targeting theory was that the great Russian ethnic group control Russia. And so in our nuclear targeting, we should target them and destroy them. And then the Soviet Union would collapse. And I've already written on that saying that's genocidal too. So this, the allegations that have come out so far, and from what I've read in the public so far, are consistent with my opposition to biological weapons and the neoconservative support for biological weapons going back to about 1983. That's my opinion.
And when was your book published, the Bioweapons and Terrorism book?
That was in 2005.
So this information has been readily available since 2005. Dr. Francis Boyle is with us. We got to go to a break. Folks, tell friends and family to tune into this. This is the information the corrupt American media is trying to cover up right now. Dr. Francis Boyle is my guest. Incredible information in the last segment. I want to provide a little framework to it here with the current news cycle and get him to respond to this. We've had the Western media and intelligence agencies within 48 hours last week go from the labs don't exist, and then they got their wires crossed. Then Newland in front of Congress says, oh, the labs do exist. Then, okay, wait, they don't exist from the State Department and Psaki, and then, no, they do exist, but they're health labs, but Russia's going to use them for biological warfare. So clearly the government's lying. Clearly the American media is lying about this as well. And then the big news has to be that Putin was right when he said that the Pentagon and Ukraine have biological weapons labs in Ukraine that have race-specific weapons research. He was right about that, just like he was right about the neo-Nazis. That's just a fact. You can love Putin, hate Putin. He's not the one lying about these situations. And you also mentioned the BSL-3. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the lab in Wuhan, that was a BSL-4, and is a BSL-3 the highest level they have in Ukraine? And what is the significance of that, Dr. Francis Boyle?
Yeah, as I pointed out previously to Alex, the Wuhan is a BSL-4 like Fort Detrick. Indeed, the Wuhan BSL-4 is China's Fort Detrick. And the big difference between the BSL-3 and the BSL-4 is that the BSL-4 can work with the highest category of dangerous pathogens, and in addition, aerosolize them by means of nanotechnology, which the Wuhan BSL-4 has done. So at that Wuhan BSL-4, if you see the pictures of the Chinese bat queen there who helped develop COVID-19 with the University of North Carolina BSL-3, you will see she's wearing a moon suit with her own air supply. And that you do at a BSL-4 in order to, the BSL-4 Wuhan bragged on their webpage that they have applied nanotechnology to viruses, making it an infinitesimal size so that it can float on the air, in the air, under the air, whatever. And so even we've had scientists studies saying that COVID-19 can travel anywhere from 20 to 30 feet in the air, right? Whereas you don't really have that. Yeah, you don't really have that at a BSL-3, but you can do almost every other hideous type of biological warfare work you can possibly imagine at a BSL-3. I mean, just read the web pages for BSL-3s. Yes.
So you had China addressing the UN, and you've had Putin and other Russian state affiliates saying what's going on with these biolabs. We know that there's at least 30 of them in Ukraine. I guess the highest level was the one in Odessa, which is kind of, I believe, southeastern Ukraine. So what is the significance of this? How many biolabs are there in Ukraine, and what are they doing there, do you believe, Dr. Francis Boyle?
Sure. There has been a comprehensive policy for quite some time by the United States government and the Pentagon to surround Russia with biological warfare laboratories. We also have them in Central Asia as well, and to pre-position biological warfare weapons to use against them. It's very clear the pattern that has gone on here. Yes, my opinion.
And so you have Victoria Nuland, who, in my opinion, has blood on her hands in Ukraine for now almost 10 years with the neocon warhawk policy in Ukraine, using Ukraine as just kind of an operating ground of Western interests and NATO as kind of the conduit for their money laundering and weapons laundering. And Russia is just sick of it. So we've now reached this point where the American media and our government, they got crossed, Dr. Francis Boyle. They were not even on the same page with their lies. They said they don't exist. No, they do exist. No, they don't exist. Oh, wait, they do exist, but they're quote unquote health labs. But somehow this health lab is going to be used by Russia as a biological weapons. I mean, did they just not get their lies straight? Or are they just totally flummoxed? Are they that incompetent? Why the mixed messaging on these labs, do you think?
I really don't know, Owen, because I've been fighting against this since 1983. I've had a consistent message since 1983. But, you know, the problem with these neoconservatives like Nuland, you know, they're diehard Machiavellians and neo-Nazis. I'm sure you've dealt with the neocons. I have in the legal profession. That's just the way they are. They say whatever they're going to say for whatever purpose they're going to say. So please don't ask me. I mean, I understand their mentality because that's how long I've been up against them. They're Nazis. They have a Nazi mentality. There's no question about it in my mind. I've told this to Alex before. I know the American people have a hard time accepting this, but any government like our own that has researched, developed, tested, stockpiled for use biological warfare weapons in Ukraine against Russia, these people are Nazis. And that's the mentality we are dealing with here. I guess Nuland just figured that since they control the mainstream news media, which they do, they can say whatever they want to.
You crafted the Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act of 1989. We've had Nuremberg trials. We have other international laws that go against chemical warfare, biological warfare. Why is the U.S. or Ukraine or whoever it is involved in these labs, why are they above the law? Why do they get to operate these labs?
Well, they really don't. I mean, we run them. We put them in there. They're under our control and domination. Yeah, you can see the from your picture there. They're all around Russia, and that's, you know, these are our labs. Yes, they're there. They do what we tell them to do, but we control them, and it's because of the geographical location. Also, notice the labs you have over there near China. Right, the same policy against China. You have it there on the right off of China. So sure, it's no doubt. Why are all these labs positioned around Russia and positioned around China? They are to be used against Russia and China for sure.
Do you believe that Putin has a just cause to go shut those labs down?
Well, let me say this, Owen. These labs are extremely dangerous. They have to be secured, first of all, but they simply cannot be blown up. We found that in Gulf War I. As you know, I've discussed with Alex, the Center for Disease Control and the American Type Culture Collection sent 40 shipments of weapon-specific biological warfare weapons to Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
Dr. Francis Boyle, we've got to take a break here. Let's hold that thought. I'm going to ask you the same question on the other side of this break. Dr. Francis Boyle with us here on the Alex Jones Show. And Dr. Francis Boyle is with us here. Not to be redundant, Dr. Boyle, but we got cut off by the last break, so I'm just going to ask you the same question and give you the time to properly respond here. Was Vladimir Putin justified in going into Ukraine to shut down these biological weapons labs, Dr. Francis Boyle?
Well, let me say this. These labs are so dangerous, they must all be secured and decontaminated by Russian biological warfare experts. You just can't blow them up. We made that mistake in Gulf War I, where we gave the Center for Disease Control and the American Type Culture Collection 40 shipments of weapon-specific biological warfare agents to Saddam Hussein in the hope and expectation that he would weaponize them and use them against Iran, which he did. When the war was over, however, we then ordered our own troops simply to blow these biological warfare weapons labs up, and in the process contaminated, infected our own troops, having a role to play in the Gulf War sickness. So these labs have to be handled very carefully. Of course, they have to be rendered permanently inoperable for any purpose at all. They serve no legitimate medical or scientific purpose, but have to be careful. Any type of contamination, not only of the Russian troops, but also the innocent Ukrainian people over here. You know, they invited me to lecture over there in Ukraine. I've been there. I met many government officials, lawyers, peace leaders, and even had a tour of, asked for a tour of where Nestor wrote his chronicles, that monastery where Kievan Rus civilization goes back for both the Russians and the Ukrainians. So this has to be considered as well.
So in China, in the Wuhan lab, they were doing the gain of function research, which is just ramping up man-made viruses to make them as contagious as possible. What use that would have for humans on planet Earth is beyond me, but the story is now in Ukraine. So they're saying their official narrative now, Dr. Boyle, is what they're saying is they're health labs, quote unquote, health labs. But as you just said, there's no practical use for these labs other than a military application. I mean, what reasoning would they even give to call these a health lab, or is that just an outright propaganda lie?
Well, it's Orwellian doublespeak, Owen. Over the years, what the Pentagon and the CDC, Food and Drug Administration, this whole U.S. offensive biological warfare industry we have now, the justification they have come up is this: oh, well, there's some exotic disease out there somewhere in the environment, or that we can discover and think up of or derive ourselves with synthetic biology, and therefore we have to develop some type of vaccine against it. But in order to do the vaccine, we first have to develop the biological weapon. You see, it's sort of like three-card Monte or a shell game or something like that. So there's, oh yes, we're there for health purposes, but really that's just a facade justification for developing offensive biological warfare weapons with gain of function, DNA, genetic engineering, synthetic biology. But they've used this lie for as long as I've been opposing biological weapons, going back to the Reagan administration and their neocons. And I have to point out, the Reagan administration and their Federalist Society lawyers and their neocons fought me and the Council for Responsible Genetics tooth and nail from 1985 until Bush Sr. Came in there. and 1989, and dropped the opposition to my legislation because the Reaganites and the neocons and the Federalist Society lawyers knew full well, even from my personal statements and testimony in Congress, I was going directly after them with life imprisonment and hitting them as hard as I could, short of the death penalty, because I'm against the death penalty.
Going back to the biological weapons that the West provided to Saddam Hussein, which we then ended up blowing up, causing all kinds of health problems for our troops and I'm sure others in that region of the planet. Are you afraid at all that they, because to me that sounds like a cover-up operation, are you afraid at all that they might try to run a similar operation in Ukraine and just say, screw it, we're going to blow up these labs to cover up our operations?
Sure, Nuland has already said this. This is what psychoanalysis calls projection. We're projecting on the Russians what we very well might do ourselves. So yes, there could be what you call false flag attack by these U.S. biolabs in Ukraine and blaming it on the Russians, right, to justify U.S. military intervention, direct U.S. military intervention into Ukraine. And the statement the other day by President Biden about use of chemical weapons was pretty ominous. And here, Owen, technically, I want to point out there's a separate regime applicable to chemical weapons, the Chemical Weapons Convention. But as a matter of fact, the only government in the entire world that has violated its obligations to disarm itself from the all chemical weapons, all right, is the United States of America. We have to keep that in mind. And under the influence of the neoconservatives who believe, like biological weapons, they can and should be used. There was a date certain in the Chemical Weapons Convention to which we are a party, saying all chemical weapons must be disarmed. No later, I think it was April 2012 or something like that, with no excuses. And yet, ever since then, we have come up with one excuse after another, patently bogus lies for why we have to keep our chemical weapons. Indeed, when we demanded Syria give up their chemical weapons, we got that job done lickety-split. And yet we've refused to do it because the United States government, the deep state, the neoconservatives want chemical weapons. And so, sure, there could be a false flag chemical weapons attack there in Ukraine to get the United States directly involved in warfare against Russia, as implied just last week by President Biden. We know that the chemical weapons attacks in Syria were not by the Syrian government. I said that at the time, and also Professor Ted Postel at MIT, who specialized in weapons designs for the United States government, said the same thing. And the Pulitzer Prize winning investigative reporter Seymour Martin Hirsch did extensive exposés, both first in the London Review of Books and then second in a German publication, saying the Syrian government had nothing to do with those chemical weapons attacks. So it was all done by our jihadis over there in Syria, and we assisted them. So sure, this could happen again, Owen, either a false flag chemical weapons attack, which Nuland basically suggested, or a biological warfare weapons chemical attack. So, and that would be trumpeted by the Biden administration and the mainstream news media for overt intervention into this war, which literally would set off a World War III between the United States and Russia.
Final segment here with Dr. Francis Boyle. And I've got two questions left for him, and then if we have more time, he can just make a final statement. Dr. Francis Boyle, what kind of backroom deals are made, or do you believe are made by the West and countries like China and Ukraine? Because it appears that these bioweapons labs are just really Western operated, and then they somehow get these countries to agree to run them and house them. But it seems to be like it's Western controlled and operated, specifically in Ukraine, maybe in China too. What kind of backroom deals do you think go down as the expert in this? I mean, is it like, hey, we're going to give you billions of dollars in foreign aid to Ukraine, but you're going to house our biological weapons research, or how does this stuff go down?
Well, first, Owen, I think we have to understand that we have an international, transnational cult of Nazi biowarfare death scientists like Tony Fauci, who has been up to his eyeballs in this for Reagan. When I got involved in this around 1983 or 4, Reagan put Tony Fauci in charge of our offensive biological warfare weapons program. And that is how long he has been there. And then he has trained, and Francis Collins, of course, the former head of NIH, he's involved in this too. As we know, they funded the research that led to COVID-19, that offensive biological warfare weapon with gain-of-function property. And then that just spread all over the world. Yes, it's a cult of these people, including over there in China as well. That Wuhan Bat Queen, she was trained at the Galveston BSL-4 down there in Texas, which is, again, part of the offensive U.S. biological warfare industry. The British are a part of this, the French, the Israelis. So we have a network and a cult of Nazi biowarfare death scientists, which gets back to the point you raised about these athletes. We have to resist this Nazi medical tyranny by these death scientists like Fauci and Walensky, and we can go through the whole list of these people. Yes. Second, the second motivation is just money. They take patents on this technology beforehand, every step of the way. And so they can benefit on both sides of the bargain, as it were. They can benefit and make profits off of both the biological warfare weapon itself and then on the alleged vaccine or therapeutic. So they've got us coming and going, and they're killing. They're making a killing off of us as they go to the bank. So that is my interpretation of what's involved here, Owen.
Is it a well-known secret in D.C. in the halls of the elite politicians and the neocon hawks and just the political establishment there, the swamp or the deep state as it's known? Anthony Fauci's role at the NIH or whatever else he's involved in, is that all just a front? Is Anthony Fauci really the biological weapons chief for America?
Yes, since Reagan put him in power at NIAID, I think it was about 1984 or so, Owen. That's how long I've been fighting against Fauci. And about 95% of this Nazi biowarfare death science dirty work has been funded by Fauci, NIAID, and then NIH since about 1984, when Reagan and the neocons got into it. As I said, what spurred me into action was a very comprehensive report on the abuse of DNA genetic engineering by the Reagan administration and his neocons to research, develop, test, stockpile for use biological weapons, every type of biological weapon that they could think up with. And indeed now with synthetic biology that they can concoct. Indeed, the COVID-19, the Bat Queen took a synthetic biology organism from the Wuhan BSL-4, brought it over to the University of North Carolina BSL-3, and then gave it gain of function properties under Barrick there, who's an expert on this, and his team. And by the way, the FDA was involved in this too. Now think about that. The FDA that is approving these Nazi Frankenshots that are killing people and disabling people was involved in the development of COVID-19. So they've got us on both sides here. Likewise, Walensky, who can't get her story straight either, right? She can't. She comes from the Harvard Medical School. The Harvard Medical School was involved in the development of the COVID-19 biological warfare weapon. Indeed, Harvard was one of the sponsoring institutions of the Wuhan BSL-4, China's Fort Detrick. Now think about that for a minute. And indeed, the chair of the Harvard chemistry department, Lieber, he was over there too with his own lab specializing in nanotechnology. And Lieber had also worked for the Pentagon, Fort Detrick, nanotechnologizing biowarfare weapons for them. The Amerithrax attack, nanotechnology there. You had a trillion spores per gram on Amerithrax. I was the first one to blow the whistle on that, coming out of a U.S. biowarfare lab and program on November 1, 2001, at our conference for the responsible genetics at Harvard Divinity School. So this type of activity, I had thought that my Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act would put an end to this, but it didn't. It made no difference. There was too much money involved and too many completely unprincipled people like Tony Fauci with a Nazi mentality here. And again, I don't really follow professional athletics, but I think these guys have it right. We have to resist Nazi medical tyranny. There is no other word for what is going on in this country today. And I commend these athletes for using their celebrity power to bring this out to a broader audience in the American people, certainly that I can as a mere law professor.
Well, I'll tell you what, it makes a lot more sense now, especially with Peter Daszak and others like, oh, Fauci, he's like the CIA guy. He's like an army guy in these leaked documents and text and conversations that we know about now. It all makes more sense. Dr. Fauci was never a doctor at the head of some health bureaucracy in America. Dr. Fauci has been the biological weapons chief of the United States in America for almost 40 years now. And boy, oh boy, you understand that. It all starts to make a lot more sense. And so here's the problem, and I'll close with this, and we've got about 90 seconds here. We have to deal with this criminal rot gut in our country. We, the American people, need to be the ones putting Fauci in under a criminal investigation for war crimes and biological weapons crimes. We have to do that, because if we don't, folks, that's when you start to get World War scenarios, when other people that you might think are bad, like Putin or Xi, are having to deal with the corruption here because we won't deal with it. Final 60 seconds, closing words, Dr. Francis Boyle.
Right. Oh, well, I was on previously with Alex to explain exactly how to do that. Namely, we have to convince every state and local prosecutor here in the United States to bring indictments against Fauci, Collins, Daszak, everyone involved in that UNC BSL-3, as well as the people involved at Moderna, Pfizer, BioNTech, Johnson & Johnson, the chief executive officer, scientific officer, for murder and conspiracy to commit murder against the American people. I went through this at great length with Alex on a previous show, but that's what we can do. Right. The federal government is not going to help us because, as we know, the so-called Department of Injustice is in Biden's pocket. And Biden is the one who appointed Walensky from the Harvard Medical School up to its eyeballs in COVID-19 as the CDC director.
Dr. Francis Boyle, great stuff as always. Thank you so much.